There is a great shift in politics, governance, military, finance, culture, security, and even education globally. And it's all thanks to artificial intelligence. This technology has become entrenched in our everyday lives, but there are concerns of ethics as governments use it for surveillance and in war, amplifying unimaginable changes and outcomes. With the current boom in AI industry, tech companies across the globe are racing to develop more advanced versions of this technology, straining the efforts to keep it in check. In this interview with Ruman Chaudhry, former machine learning ethics director at Twitter, as she shares her opinion on whether AI is accountable for the shift that's changing how we are governed, work, and live.
The recent AI boom, to be very specific, is more generative AI, so the automation of certain types of knowledge work, and I think people are very familiar with how ChatGPT works. That being said, AI and machine learning have been available for years at this point, and to an extent one can say we are already living in an AI world. We just may not know it. Half the devices that work on our phone use artificial intelligence or machine learning. The big revolution in 2022 was that those technical systems were taken out of mainframes at big companies, and they were put into everybody's hands. So the kinds of issues that are endemic to these models, going back to the earliest versions, are now visible on your phone. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. So in one sense, I love the fact that the general public is more knowledgeable about AI. I've been working in responsible AI for about 8 years, and I used to have to explain to people why they should care, how AI impacts their lives. Now you don't have to have that conversation. Everybody has a really strong opinion about AI. They have really strong opinion on how it's going to impact their livelihood, their jobs, their children, and they're asking the right questions. I love that. On the other end, what we're seeing from this new wave of AI is an increased control and consolidation of wealth, power, accessibility, and control, the level of invasiveness into our lives and the data that's being collected, and the fact that we have no accountability mechanisms.
This is the Vision Network.
The technology can be used for many different things. The Trump administration is choosing to use it to target and kidnap people. One interesting way to think about this is what happens when it's in the hands of like the average person. So my colleague, Dr. Chris Gilliard, is working on a book called Luxury Surveillance about how we have all these devices in our homes, on our bodies, that actually are surveillance devices. Everything from Ring cameras to this Oura ring I'm wearing right now are actually surveillance devices. This thing has my health data. If you wear an Apple Watch when you're running, it has things like your location, your heartbeat, right? So what we're fundamentally talking about here is actually not necessarily surveillance, but it's actually a lack of data privacy. So what we lack in the United States is any sort of ownership over how our data is being used. And that translates to AI as well. So the problem to solve here is who owns the data. So if I'm wearing a device, if the requirement is, well, once this data has been sent to whatever company, they have every right over using in any way possible, which is essentially the world we live in, that is something to be concerned about. So instead of saying, how can we stop AI from doing surveillance, let's get to the fundamental unit of exploitation, which is our data.
This is the Vision Network.
One of my biggest concerns is we are going to enter a post-truth world, one in which we cannot trust anything we see online, and we don't have trusted and verified source. We see there's this term AI slop, where we are increasingly seeing things online that look hyper-realistic but are fake. About 40 to 50% of people who I mentioned that to never realized that it was fake. And this is the thing, like It's something quite innocent and innocuous and kind of funny, but to realize that it wasn't real and you thought it was real really just starts to, ring a bell in your head. Well, how can I trust anything I read online? And also with, and these are institutional failures, right? So I don't want to just say, oh, AI is what caused it. AI is an unfortunately excellent mechanism by which we test the upper limits of every institution we have, whether it's education, media, right? Everything we have, the transportation is the one that we're experiencing right now, right? It's pushing the upper limits. And what I mean is wherever a flaw is, it will push on that flaw until it breaks. So journalism is a great example, right? We have had decades of journalism being underfunded, journalists being laid off, right? And recently, we saw that a major news outlet in Chicago had an entirely AI-generated listicle of books to read, half of which were fake. And this is not just because AI generates fake material. It's because that newspaper made an active decision not to pay a human to do a task that it thought an AI could do. So yes, AI generates slop, but also our institutions are increasingly being stressed and are increasingly failing us. And AI is just a way in which we're now poking holes in it.
This is DT Vision Network.
Interestingly, the history of the US and in terms of technological development is we have been less engaged in global majority countries than China and Russia have. So a large part of Southern Africa, their telecom is actually Chinese companies coming in doing telecom. There was a great article about 5 or 6 years ago that there was kind of a lot of news about this, but I think globally we just really didn't pay attention. So yes, it is colonialism, and and it's not just colonialism in the most traditional sense, as you mentioned earlier. These are surveillance technologies. So it's more than just saying, oh, we're setting up data centers and we're wiring up your country. It's saying that we're installing the cameras, where the data routes through. And to be very clear, when China set up a lot of the telecom in different African countries, it was in exchange for their data. They did it for free in exchange for data. So, am I a fan that this is happening? Absolutely not. Is it a continuation of a problem we have seen for quite some time? Yes, it didn't just start with the Trump administration.
This is DT Vision Network.
One of the most interesting trends I am seeing in 2025, which was certainly not on my bingo card, is what people are calling sovereign AI. Because of all of these geopolitical tensions we're talking about, the uncertainty in America, people's mistrust of also consolidating wealth and power in certain big tech companies, mistrust of Trump administration, many countries are actually saying, we want to own and build our own AI system. So last year, as Science Envoy, I did an entire trip in the ASEAN region, and that was one thing I was hearing. And in my professional opinion at that time, what I was saying is that doesn't really make sense. It's very, very expensive to make these. There's a massive capital cost, there's a massive labor cost. At that time, when things were a lot better geopolitically, it just did not seem to make sense to do that. Now I can understand why countries want to do that. So, for example, Malaysia has just announced that they want to build their own homegrown AI models. India is investing quite a bit as well. And we know that China has been a superpower in AI for quite some time. So one of the most interesting byproducts of this environment that you're talking about is countries are actually hunkering down and saying we want to make our own AI systems, which is fascinating because AI it's fundamentally a technology. The fact that it is getting defined by country borders is in some ways kind of sad. It's a bit of a regression from the world that I think a lot of techno-optimists wanted to see, a world that was actually rather borderless because of technology. And we sort of do live in that world, right? Wi-Fi is a great example. Cell phones are a great example. These are actually international treaties that are negotiated to say, 5G is a thing that exists everywhere, so you don't have to buy a new phone every time you visit a different country. Now, if AI ends up not being that way, we've talked about the splinternet, right? The internet breaking up, and AI, it seems like out of the gate, may end up becoming splintered.
This is DT Vision Network.
Right, but there are many models we have worked on, different types of governance models, for example, where states and, let's say, civil society organizations can have a say in governance, that there is some authority that is not just entirely owned by these companies, right? So other entities do have certain rights, let's say, shut down AI systems or prevent certain types of use. This is why some of the laws that have come out of Europe that have been, people call it the Brussels effect, right? Their laws are actually applicable not in the geographic level, but on the per citizen level. So if there is an EU citizen in your country, they are protected by certain laws in Europe, like the General Data Protection Regulation. And what happens is that then pushes everybody to have to comply. So there are ways around it. We have talked about governance models. And the other kind of controversial one that's been in discussion for quite some time is basically making these technologies a public utility. If we are going to say that AI is a public good, right, that it has this opportunity to benefit everybody, which every single one of the CEOs has said, right, it's going to revolutionize education, everyone's going to have the world's knowledge at their fingertips. What you're telling me is that it's a public good. Then it should not be treated like it's a private entity.
This is DT Vision Network.
It is incredibly dehumanizing, right? So we, as an entity, as a country, are so removed from decades of war that we have instigated in other countries. We send our lowest income children to go fight these wars. They come back scarred, but we never have to see them. We never have to face them. These are like abstract, even the war in Afghanistan is an abstract concept to most Americans, right? And yet there we are actually actively changing the fate of millions of people around the world. And we get further and further removed. Even these soldiers get further and further removed the more AI is used. So even if you have quote unquote human oversight, what does that even mean? It's a video camera on a drone. Some kid, literally a child, is behind a screen and it looks like they're playing a video game.
Yeah.
That is literally, and I remember this is, God, probably about 15 years old, this reference, but there was once this video that went viral of where this young soldier, used an unmanned aerial drone to shoot somebody down, had a camera on it. And I remember when it happened, like they were all like cheering, jumping up and down. And I was kind of horrified by that because this person may be your quote unquote enemy, but that is a human life you just ended. And there seemed to be no realization of that. And what I'm saying is not that, video games are evil. It's that, like, as we build more and more technology, we are further and further removed from the real world human implications, right? And then as we create drones that are capable of doing this warfare for us, it's almost like if you've read the book Ender's Game, right? Where you end up, like, there are these artificial wars that are being fought of AI systems shooting down poor people in other countries, and you and I never have to think about it. Our children never go to these wars. It does not even occur to us or impact our lives the way it'll impact other people.
This is DT Vision Network.
So I am of two minds about this. So there are very strong codes of ethics and conduct in the military, right? And there are actually ethical guidelines in the military. And to be transparent, like, I've worked with plenty of amazing people at the Department of Defense, including their responsible AI team, who think quite a bit about this. So it's not to say, just sort of blanket that like all of it's evil and all these people are terrible people. It's a complex problem. But the other interesting part about the problem is that it is almost abstractly fascinating to me that we still think wars are fought on the ground with bullets. The nature of warfare is actually cyber warfare. And maybe it's hard for generals who have fought in physical battles to think about it. But I think one thing to think about the nature of warfare is more than just the physicality, right? Bullets and people on the ground, but things like you can now, hold a government entity for ransom, which we have actually seen in some cases.
This is DT Vision Network.
Every iteration of technology removes us further and further from the real world implication, right? Like that young man who was watching that video and he pushed the button to kill somebody, he never looked at that human being. That person was just a bunch of pixelated gray dots.
Yeah.
And that is a human being who died. And in even 20 years ago, he could have been the same person in the same situation, but he would have had to see that person and understand that I have done something with a great amount of gravity. So the moral outsourcing here is coming from not just us blaming an AI system if it's doing something bad or wrong and not taking responsibility, but also, again, removing ourselves from the implications of what we're doing and not understanding that the actions we take have consequences on regular people.
This is DT Vision Network.
I wrote an article for Wired, I think it's almost 3 years old now, 2 or 3 years old now, about how we actually need global governance of AI systems. And the closest we have are the kind of voluntary nuclear treaties that have been established, but we have not ever actually pulled together regulation that is applied, that's created on a global level and applied on a global level. In general, we tend to respect certain states' autonomy. But again, AI is a global technology, and it's much like the conversation about climate, right? I can decide to have the best water quality laws in my country, but if the country that borders me dumps a bunch of pollutants in their water, that water is not stopping at the border and deciding to clean itself. It's coming in. Air quality is a great example. So how can we think of AI as a paradigm similar to the way we thought about climate? But again, even in climate, we never actually had truly enforceable, but then the concern is, as you've mentioned, those rooms get less and less accessible. So one of the critiques I've had about this AI governance community of practice, which exists globally. We are the same, probably 60 to 80 people. I fly all around the world and see the same people over and over and over again, and I have been for years. I just came back from Singapore. I am going to be in Hamburg, Munich, Paris, etc. And I'm going to be honest, like, we are just a group of people who are all in the room, and I cannot claim that we can speak for everybody, and yet we don't even feel like we're getting access, right, to the closest of the closest rooms, the rooms that the world leaders are going to pull the tech CEOs into. I'm not going to get access into those rooms. I may get access into others, but that is significantly more access than the average American or the average Brazilian is going to get. So it sounds, the idea, if we take a step back, the idea of global governance is a beautiful idea, but global governance is the least representative form of governance that we could possibly have.
This is DT Vision Network.
The human condition. I think human beings as a group, we're very fascinating. We have been faced throughout our history, right, with some of the most horrible circumstances and somehow persevered, right, somehow brought beauty out of it. And it doesn't automatically happen, right? People have to fight for it. People have to push for it. We have to want it. So what I don't want to sell is this story that like, ... everything's going to be fine. We have to fight for everything to be fine. We are faced with a lot of adversity, but the more people like you and I talk about, the more people who are watching this show are aware of it. I just want people to make smart decisions. So I see my job as enabling those smart decisions to be made, whether it's pushing for protections for ethical hackers and building the third party of algorithmic auditors, whether it is fighting for data privacy, whether it is working with lawmakers to make them more knowledgeable. I think there are things that some of us can do, and even just for the average person, right? When you use a technology, think about how your data might be utilized. Are there alternate ways to do it? What are the protections you could take into place right now? How can you protect and educate your children? I think probably one of the most important things that a parent can do today is make their child aware of everything that exists online. We can't just assume they know. Human beings have this amazing way of when we really want to do something, we go ahead and we do it.
For more on well-researched and balanced stories, events and interviews across business, tech innovation and lifestyle, please like, share and subscribe to this channel, www.youtube.com/digivationnetwork.